Hey guys, Ramsey here. Welcome to another video. Tonight we have a late night insight video on a very intriguing house for the hardcore frag heads. This is from the house of Clandestine Laboratories and it is called Lockdown. Now, there is a very interesting backstory behind Lockdown, from my understanding, is that March, April of 2020, right when COVID was in full swing and the world had just got shut down, Mark Sage lost his job. So days before his 50th birthday, he basically had this feeling of almost like one of those paradigm shifts in life, right? And even though he probably should have felt this sense of foreboding and fear and what's the future going to be, he said it brought with him this complete freedom and peace and optimism. And this also sense of craving human connection and comfort and all of that, and spent time kind of alone watching the birds and smelling the flowers and all of that stuff. And it was this amazing period of basically anxiety and this unbelievable serenity come together in lockdown. Of course, for those of you who remember that time well, which how could you not, right? Since it's still so fresh in our brains. Now we're only in 2024. But he basically says that Lockdown is a fragrance that contrasts these rough green and elements with cool and spicy elements, incense, resins, and woody, smoky, animalistic-like base, okay? So it embodies the very special period of time in which the present and the future were suspended, if you will. So nothing was certain and anything is possible, as he says. Now, what makes this very interesting as a release, and I love doing these type of videos that get very little talk on in fragrance, in FragCom in general, but this was released in 2023 as a 35 bottle limited edition. If you've never seen Clandestine Laboratories packaging or bottles, this is basically how they come. This is a bottle of silver, which is a very unique take on an amber, which I will review one of these days. But it was basically, Lockdown was very well received, okay? And so what ended up happening is he decided that he was going to work with American Perfumer again. If you just Google American Perfumer, you'll find their site. It's an amazing place to go research and look up some of these brands that I've talked about. There's a couple reasons I wanted to talk about Lockdown today. It's currently May the 6th of 2024. And so this is being re-released on May the 25th. But he's doing it, since there's only 35 bottles for the whole world, he's basically doing it in a very similar sort of fashion that Henley releases Bloodline, where you have to kind of go through the auction process. And if you're lucky, you'll have the right to buy the bottle, right? And so that's the way that American Perfumer does it. So you can look into putting your name in the hat if you want to have the potential to buy a bottle. The other thing is, Mark Sage came on my channel, and I want to announce that we will be having another interview on the channel. This time it's going to be next weekend, okay? So, well, this coming weekend. So it will be on Saturday is the plan. And so it's going to be Saturday, May the 11th, okay? I don't know an exact time yet because the chap we're going to be talking about is in India. His name is Prakar Gupta. He runs and owns the House of Sherwood, who you've seen on the channel lately. And so we're going to do an interview with him, which I love those kind of interview sessions because it really gives us a chance to get to know the thinking of the person who owns the house and hear their stories. And there's some amazing stories out there. And Mark Sage is one such story. So his interview did not get as many views as I would have expected, but maybe it's just because not a lot of people know it's there. Not a lot of people know of him. When he founded the House of Clandestine Laboratories, he wanted to be this mysterious figure in the background, like almost like Batman. No one knew who he was. No one knew his identity. You know what I mean? And eventually he realized it's impossible because people want to interact. They want to hear the story. They want to see the face and link it to the brand. And so I would urge you to go check out my review or my interview with him. And if you can make the interview, it'll be on a live stream so you can ask Prakar questions. Those are always awesome. Speaking of interviews, my scent of the day real quick was Papillon's Hera, which is probably one of, if not the greatest ambrette scents I've ever smelled. The ambrette in this is just heavenly with that musk mallow, weird sort of musk smell. It's very hard to describe. ambrette. But I do have a review where I tried my best to discuss this off of a decant. But Liz Moore's very kindly sent me a bottle of Hera, and I wore it today for the first time in a long time as my scent of the day, and it is absolutely gorgeous. This is just beautiful stuff. And she agreed to come on the channel for a interview later on in the year because she has a new fragrance coming out called Epona. So once it is officially released and we can talk about it, she's going to come on the channel. So I cannot wait to have her on. Okay, so enough of that. So the reason why I wanted to do this review today is because if you want the chance to get your hat in the ring, now is the time to start doing that, and May 25th of 2024 is the official release date. So I guess if not enough people put their name in the hat, then you can just go on there on May 25th and buy a bottle. There's only 35 bottles for the whole world. So the first thing that hits my nose about Lockdown is this big, almost like verdant green blast of your nose focuses on a couple things. It focuses on the green aspect of the scent. Almost like taking a knife and cutting into a piece of celery long ways, and opening it up and just getting that sort of hit of this earthy green combination, right? And then come this blast of spices rushing at you. And I say rushing at you because that's literally how it feels. It feels like you've just poured some oil on the fire. So you've already spiced the food and you're cooking it and you poured oil on the fire, and literally, I mean, this flame comes up into the air, and when the flame comes up into the air, the spices just attack your nose. And so you're hit with the red Szechuan pepper, the pink pepper, the green pepper, which Mark Sage loves to use. I would not be surprised if he snuck green pepper in here. And so just imagine all of these peppery, spicy notes kind of hitting your nose all at once. But it isn't like, if you've ever been to hibachi and you've seen them kind of cook the food right there in front of you, usually the hibachi chefs will start by kind of putting some oil on, lighting it, and the flame kind of goes. It makes a little bit of a show. The youngins love it. And also, I think it kind of cleanses the cooking area a little bit. But it's not that kind of feel, because that would put you in a public place. And this, to my nose, maybe it's the marketing working on me, but there is something cozy about the way that Mark Sage created this scent. It's like you are you're not in public. You're sitting in your kitchen, in your sweatpants, maybe in just an undershirt, and you're cooking on your stove, okay? And while you're cooking, you look out the window, you realize that the rain subsided a little bit, so you open the window and you can smell almost like a windowsill garden that you planted long ago, and the smell of your garden flowers are wafting into the kitchen as you're cooking, as the spices and as that verdant green feel is kind of hitting you. And of course, it's your garden, so you think your flowers look better than everyone else's, right? And there's something comforting about that. There's something comforting about smelling your combination of flowers in your garden, right? And being in your house, in your kitchen, and cooking your food, right? There's something about that is just very comforting. And so just imagine you're sort of mentally and almost physically like transporting yourself into the world of botany and plants and vegetation and this greenery, but everything smells. What's so amazing about Lockdown, I think, is everything smells so natural. It's a natural, beautiful smell. Like you're smelling real things. I mentioned celery. Like you're smelling the celery. It's you're not smelling a synthetic compound. There's something extremely natural about this scent, which is very interesting. It's a scent that I have a lot of time for. I've had a chance to wear this twice now since Mark Sage sent it, and I can tell you, obviously I can't buy any bottles, but this is the type of fragrance that I would not mind adding to the collection. So the fragrance takes on this vegetation-like smell, as I said. It's both green and floral and earthy. Those are basically the three combinations of this scent initially. And sort of in the background, I would say you're almost like halfway aware of the lemony, elemi that is in here. You're also aware of some of the resins in the background, like labdanum, like, for example, There is myrrh in the background in the scent as well. So there's myrrh, there's labdanum, there's some sandalwood, but that is all sort of in the periphery. Really, my nose tends to really focus on the green, floral, and earthy touches, if you will. The things that you would expect to be heavier don't take over the scent. So, for example, it doesn't become a labdanum centric scent. Into the dry down, maybe you'll get a little bit more of it, but it doesn't become a labdanum myrrh resinous type of scent. It stays slightly fresh, slightly citrusy. And what's interesting is how Mark Sage managed to bring these floral elements out of the traditional French bouquet and out of, you know, what you would normally smell in this normal French bouquet of rose and jasmine and lily of the valley and all that good stuff. And just sort of, he makes it almost smell personal, like it's the reason I focused on your windowsill flower bed, if you will, and just imagine on the in the background you can almost see the drizzle coming down. I mean, this is really a transportative scent. Like, I can almost literally see Mark Sage sitting in his kitchen, in his sweatpants with his wok, making some sort of stir fried, because the other vegetables and feeling that tends to come to mind, one thing in particular popped to my mind while I was smelling this, outside of celery, and that is bok choy. If you've ever cooked with bok choy, you know, I get this green bok choy like feel, and just imagine these fiery spices, and the spices, you know, just imagine you're cooking all this up while a thunderstorm is maybe just passed through. Maybe it's still slightly sprinkling, but the thunderstorm and the rain made the air feel slightly electric, and you know, feel like it's just radiating energy. And you're just kind of sitting there smelling this earth that was recently damp. And you know, whenever rain like that happens, sometimes the earth just feels like it takes on, like the smell of the ground grows by a power of 10. You know what I mean? And you can smell you can smell all of these little details of the ground that usually fall beneath your level of being able to notice them, right? Unless you like literally bend down and smell a flower or something. But the rain and the wetness just kind of brings some of that up to the surface, and it just sort of presents what I think is this very interesting paradigm. Like he said in the opening, it presents this sort of paradigm between the present and the future, and you can just almost imagine sitting there and thinking these thoughts. And if you were around in 2020, you probably did think these thoughts. You know, for my personal situation, we were always told you can't work from home. You have to be in the office. It's impossible to work from home, all the way up until COVID. And then all of a sudden everything changed, and it was like, we can work from home. And so it was just very, you know, some of the hard and set rules, all of a sudden everyone is thinking. It was like almost like Camelot. It was like JFK's administration. He called it Camelot because he felt like anything could happen at the time. There was that feeling that literally it was almost like a magical time. Anything could happen. I actually loved going to the store and being the only one in there. It was awesome. It was absolutely awesome. So there were these crazy stuff going on, but there was also good, right? There was that paradigm and contrast going on, right? So from my understanding, and again, I am ignorant of the 2023 version because I've never smelled it, okay? So I believe this is the 2024 version that Mark Sage sent me. And so from my understanding, the 2024 version, this version here, is supposed to have more of this almost like addition of a bitter orange note in the top, which I absolutely get this bitter orange. And again, it's very realistic. I would not be surprised if along with the bitter orange note, there's also this Petit Grand orange blossom, which I just did. This is not a top 10 orange blossom list. Excuse me, if you're the type of person who likes lists, check out the This Is Not a Top 10 orange blossom list. And so from my understanding, he amped up the bitter orange note in the 2024 version, because in the 2023 version, it was made up mostly, the citruses were made up mostly of lime. So it was lime and maybe some bergamot or something like that. But what he did for 2024 is he amped up this bitter orange note, which, like I said, smells very realistic and almost smells like you can smell the whole tree. Like, yes, you're getting the bitter orange, but maybe you're also getting a little bit of the blossoms, the orange blossoms that actually bloom on the tree. And so what it's supposed to do, the point of him amping up this bitter orange note over the lime note, and maybe he kept the lime as well. There's a little bit of zesty ginger, which may be part of what adds to that zing-like feeling. Like what I said, it feels like the fire just almost like attacks you. And that could be the ginger adding that zesty zing-like feel. And but what the bitter orange was supposed to do is it was supposed to help bring out the main green note in this fragrance, which is fig leaf. Okay, now fig leaf is an interesting note because it can come across as sort of like milky green. I always imagine fig leaf smelling like a milkweed. Like, I don't know, there's a lot of milkweeds in Texas. Depending on where you're watching it from, you may or may not have a lot of experience with milkweeds. But if we go into a field in Texas, there's bound to be a milkweed. And so if you ever like broken a milkweed or cut it or something like that, you know, the weed gives off literally this milk. And that's the image I always get of fig. There's this sort of weird, milky, powdery green thing, and it can almost turn slightly urinous as well. So it's almost like in a similar way, blackcurrant leaf can give you that real bitter green. It can almost feel like this green, urinous, pissy-like feel. That's how fig leaf can sometimes feel. And I think that is one of the reasons why he added civet to this composition. There is civet, and some people consider this as an animalic, citrusy type fragrance. And one of the reasons I was mentioning earlier is because the heavier resins feel like they've been kind of put into the background, you know, like almost like you're worrying about your problems for another day. The resins are there, but they're way in the background. And remember, this is that balance of interesting time. So the civet here, I think, expertly is blended and works in conjunction with the way the fig leaf gives off slightly pissy urinous vibes. And that weird green, you know, fig can sometimes feel like a green, grassy, lactonic-like smell. The fig leaf, that's really how fig leaf usually comes across to me, that weird, powdery, milky, milkweed type thing. And I think fig leaf fragrances in general are interesting, but I never fell in love with fig leaf fragrances the way other folks around me in the fragrance game, let's say, or other reviewers or, you know, friends in Fragcom have. There are some people that just absolutely adore and love fig leaf fragrances, and I just never was one of those folks. I'm not gonna lie. But honestly, objectively, I think this is probably one of the better fig leaf fragrances that I've smelled. One of my more favorite versions of a fig leaf type perfume, because it adds that subtle, bitter, herbaceous feel, milky, weird herbaceous feel with all the spiciness and everything I talked about earlier. The green earthiness, the celery, the bok choy feel, the flowers. There's ylang ylang in here. And this very fresh smelling, you know, like I said, almost like windowsill garden bouquet outside of the kitchen window, if you will. But the fig leaf works as that subtle green, grassy, herbaceous feel, the green side of things. But the composition has a lot of notes that I really love and adore. So the frankincense, the labdanum, the civet, the myrrh, all of these sort of heavier ingredients. Sandalwood is a beautiful ingredient. And it showcases the artistic side, I really think, of Mark Sage. And why I think big time frag heads, as they get into the hobby as a true proper hobby, right? And not just, I want to spray something on so the chicks around me think I smell good, right? You want to get into the hobby because there is an artistic side to this. And I really think that's why people start moving to this type of perfumery. They start moving to these type of artisan, niche, whatever you want to call these type of houses, right? They start to move away from the designers. It doesn't matter how many times that, you know, Versace or, one of these other big houses, Mont Blanc puts out a fragrance that feels like they're just reheating the same soup over and over and over again. Doesn't matter how many of those fragrance releases come out that they try to hype up. If every time you smell one, you start to get more and more and more bored and more pissed off at just the fragrance game in general, these are the type of houses that you have to go towards. You have to kind of shift your path a little bit, and that's what people start to do. They start to look for these type of houses. There's an entire world out there, and it's the reason why it's so impossible to review or smell everything, because you have to make decisions on what you're going to talk about. There are 10,000 designer releases, it feels like. And then once you get into the artisanal side of things, you realize, holy shit, there's 10,000 oud fragrances out there from all these different brands. And then you realize there's 10,000, niche fragrances, or whatever you want to call these, artisan fragrances, or whatever it is, right? These artistic houses that are usually one man shop, like Mark Sage, that does the bottle, the advertising, the packaging. He mails his own stuff. He creates the fragrances. He is the creative director and the perfumer, if you will. And so that's the reason why I think people tend to start moving towards these type of houses as time goes on. And this is a great example of a fragrance that sort of just puts a bow on that idea perfectly. So the other thing that I think is very interesting about Lockdown is it uses some ingredients that are very rare, and you just don't see them discussed in perfume, even in the more artistic houses, let's say. So, for example, this has both Cascarilla and Chinese Weeping Cypress. How many people have ever had a fragrance that has Chinese Weeping Cypress in it? So, I've heard of Cascarilla. Sorry, not Cascarilla. Cascarilla. So Cascarilla, I heard someone once mention that it's used to flavor tobacco. That sounds like I've heard that before, somewhere along the line. And there very well may be some fragrances I have that in there, but I can almost put my right hand up, swear on the Bible, I can never think of any fragrance I've ever smelled that has a Chinese Weeping Cypress note in there. All kind of cypresses that I've smelled, I don't think I've ever smelled a Chinese Weeping Cypress note. And the way it's supposed to be described is having a clear, smoky, cedar-like feel with this intertwined green note, which fits perfectly with the fig leaf, right? So cypress, normal cypress, or I guess there's no such thing as normal cypress, but if you just type in cypress smell in Google, it'll probably tell you that cypresses have this kind of green medicinal feel, leaning towards pine, but being slightly different. I love cypress. It's used in a lot of masculine fragrances. It has that green feel to it. And Chinese Weeping Cypress, apparently, what's interesting, or a fun fact, if you will, after a little bit of research, is that many Asian spas use it as like a Zen-like aroma. So they'll burn it. They'll actually use the essential oil when they're doing their massages or whatever it is, because it's supposed to penetrate the mind and soften the senses. Okay, so it shows, I think, the execution and the quality of sort of the person behind the scene creating the scent. I mean, think about what was going through Mark Sage's head while creating this. Obviously, he was trying to create this moment in time to capture both maybe the chaos and the sort of serenity and peace that he felt in 2020, just because of his personal situation. And finding an essential oil like Chinese Weeping Cypress, and first of all, having to know and understand the oil, right? And then also having to put it in a perfume where it works exactly perfectly. And he did that in Lockdown. I think this is a perfect execution, a harmonious execution of a note that is rare in a fragrance where it just is made for the fragrance. It's perfect. And so the final thing I'll say about the fragrance is the limited release. And if you're a collector, because there's two parts to this hobby, okay? On the one hand, most of us, 99% of the reason we buy the fragrance is for the juice, right? We love the juice. We wear it. I'm the type of person that I wear my collection. It is a living, breathing thing, and I want to wear as many fragrances as I can. I wear fragrances to bed, different arms, you know, elbow, wrist, all that stuff, right? But the other side of the coin is there is a collector side to this hobby. Okay, the reality of the situation is that there is the wearable side, but there's also the collectible side. Everyone loves having that rare bottle of Derby or something that is discontinued and, you know, now sells for crazy money, and you got it for a steal because you bought it long ago, or maybe you got it off of somebody who didn't know what they had, and you got a $500 bottle of Derby for $50, right? Everyone loves those type of fragrances in their collection. It's unique, it's different, all this different stuff, right? That's the collector side of the hobby. And not that Derby isn't worth the juice as well, because it's both. There's a lot of those fragrances that are both. They're both collector pieces and amazing fragrances. So this falls into that collector category as well, not because it's a long gone discontinued fragrance, but because just of the limited amount of bottles that are coming out. So as somebody who is trying to curate your collection and create it and create and make it unique and have a piece that hardly anyone else does, I mean, 35 bottles for the whole world is nothing. Those Sherwood fragrances, if you watched my Sherwood live stream from a couple days ago, I talked about a fragrance called Chrysos. And Chrysos had 56 bottles made for the whole world, okay? 56 bottles for the whole world, and it pretty much sold out. I think it might be sold out now that we're doing this video on May the 6th. Don't quote me on that, but I think it's already sold out. So, you know, you got to think that 35 bottles is not a lot. So that's one of those rare pieces that you can pull out 5 or 10 years down the road. You've got locked down, and let's say they did it last year, they did it this year, so there's only 70 bottles for the whole world. And, you know, it's just kind of one of those things. So the collector in you may very well be interested in lockdown as well. So just an interesting little side point that I thought I would mention. The fragrance inside, luckily, is also very, very good. So, and I understand, you know, when you're a one-man shop like Mark Sage, making the fragrance and all of that stuff and getting the essential oils and putting it together, and sometimes if there's expensive ingredients in there, sometimes you cannot make 5,000 bottles. I mean, you're not Guerlain, right? So they're going to be a little bit more limited in nature just by the way that the house is set up. But I'm glad I got to do this video, and I'm glad I got to do it in time for the May 25th release. So for those of you who have experience with lockdown, if you're lucky enough to have one of the original bottles from 2023, if you've smelled it, I'd love to hear your thoughts. Like I said, I've never smelled the 23 version, as I think this is the 24 version with the bitter orange. It makes a lot of sense. But yeah, I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments. Let me know what you think. Let me know what you think about the House of Clandestine Laboratories just in general. As always, thanks for watching. Cheers, guys, and I'll catch you next time. Bye-bye.